Welcome Rogue Trader to our latest Warhammer 40k 2nd edition battle report filmed here at the Crown of Command studio in Japan. Today we see the forces of Imperial Guard and Orks in a 1500 point battle. Paul regales tales of Comanche Joe and his war stories. And now let's take a look at what Paul is taking today. Leading his army, he has a captain with a haywire grenade and his command squad, a lone commissar, a primaris champion with a force rod, a judge, and another command squad which makes up his character selection. In squad choices, Paul fielded 3 squads of 10-man guardsmen and an Arbite squad. And for support, he brought a Leman Russ and 3 sentinels to round off his 1500 point selection. And as for the Orks, I took a slew of characters this time, starting with War Boss Snaganob with his combat drugs, Steel Skull and custom blaster, Paindoc Zodoff with his dock tools, Mechaniac Snagger Snot with his mech boy tools and a shock attack gun, Warphead Watgob with a scanner, Big Boss Morglug with his art armor, power fist and plasma pistol, Gretchen Standard Bearer Ogwart with a refractor field, Runtherd Morgug with his grabber stick, and Weird Boy Shakork with his Weird Boy staff. For mobs, I took 2 5-boy mobs of Bad Moons with heavy weapons, 5 Bad Moon knobs in mega armor, a mob of 10 Gretchen, and a Snotling herd of 4 bases. For support options, I took some extra models this time as I recently painted some for my friends over in Germany for the Dicehammer YouTube channel. So, I have a pulse rocket, a tractor cannon, a squig catapult, and a splatter cannon, and a dreadnought with a searchlight. And lastly, I bought a battle wagon with reinforced armor. With the Orks winning the initiative role, they opted to take the first turn of the game. I played the first strategy card, Ambush, and elected that my fearless Gretchen and Runtherd take the positions in the forest. I also got to play my second strategy card, Surprise Assault, which meant that Paul's army could not put any units in Overwatch, nor could he run any of his units in this first turn. Paul did however get to launch a bombardment off table before I could begin the game, but praised Gork and Mork that it deviated off target and landed harmlessly wide. My Ork warlord Snaganob had the Ork wargear card Steel Skull, which means that he had to roll on the Mad Boy chart at the start of the battle and apply the effects for that turn. At the start of each subsequent turn, on a roll of a 6, he has to roll to see how his mood changes on the chart. Snaganob rolled a 5, which meant that he was going to be immune to psychology until his mood changed later in the battle. And Warlord Snaganob slammed the pedal to the metal and stormed his battle wagon to the central part of the battlefield to meet Dem Umi's head-on, as he put it. The rest of the clan ran into better positions to give Dem Umi's a bit of an hard time with lots of shooters and Ed Bangin psychics from those weirdo warpheads later on in the game. With all the movement out of the way, it was time for the fun stuff with the support weapons, starting with the pulsar rocket. With my number of dies decided to pump the rocket with the necessary fuel to reach its target, to Gork's surprise, and mine too, it landed in an optimal place, just in front of those Arbites with their fancy Umi armor. The squig catapult was not as blessed as the squig pot burst mid-air and would have to wait until next turn to fire again. The next mech boy invention was the smasher gun, which I referred to as a tractor cannon previously, as its beam picks up and throws their target a number of inches and seems like fun. However, hitting your target is not as easy as I discovered. The splatter cannon I was more familiar with, and its chain ammunition that randomly spins around the battlefield. It did manage to kill old Comanche Joe, but fizzled out shortly after. As all the Ork boys had run, the Dreadnought was the only one able to fire this turn, and he took out a few Guardsmen on the fringes of the battlefield. The guard squad there under fire managed to hold their nerve, and then the Bad Moon Knobs open up their bolt pistols, downing another Imperial Guardsman. Then we're off to rolling for psychics and starting the psychic phase. Weird Boy Shack Ork had Power Vomit and Cop Dis, and Warphead Wartgob had Squish Death Wave to Crunch and Brain Burster for his powers for the game. As I had the initiative, I cast Cop Dis on one of the Rough Riders, which went through, but I only rolled 2 inches, which didn't get him to collide with the weapons team behind him. And Paul targeted my Warlord Snagger Knob with Carmine Assassin, which is a toughness test, but using a nullify card, I managed to successfully nullify it on a roll of a 4. Paul's turn began with a Comlinks roll, but the effects were nothing notable. His squads were not able to run this turn due to the surprise assault strategy card that I played before the game had begun, so Paul set up his troops the best way he could given the circumstances. I rolled for the range in inches for the pulsar rocket and scored a 6, which meant that everything within 6 inches of the rocket was going to be knocked over for the turn. The Guard Army then finished its advance moves, and Paul placed both the Sentinels and Lehman Russ as reserve moves, which is a unique rule reserved to the Imperial Guard. The cries of Mork save us as a barrage of weapon fire centered on the Orks, as Paul had his sights on maiming the Ork mob as they bravely stood there to take all the incoming fire. A couple of Gork Mork's most bravest warriors perished in the hail of las cannons and battle cannons directed at them, and Mork shed a tear for their loss. Despite their losses, Warlord Snaggernob calmed their nerves and they held on with a pass break check. The fury of the assault cannons on the Sentinels saw the heavy bolter boy from the Bad Moon mob killed, and also the smasher gun, the armor was penetrated and also destroyed along with one of its Gretchen crew. And the last Gretchen stuck in there. The Gretchens sheltered in the woods were detected by the Rough Riders, and 2 of Gork's children lost their lives to a flamer attack. In the psychic phase, saw Paul cast Displacement, which I could not stop, so the Rough Riders were free to arrange their ranks. I cast Cop Dis on the Rough Riders, but it was halted by Paul that played Demonic Attack. Orks can only be affected by this special card on a roll of a 6, which in this case, praise to Gork, it didn't happen. Paul followed up with Carmine Assassin on Snaggernob, and I rolled a 5. Thanks to his Steel Skull, the Wargear card meant that I could be only affected on a roll of a 6 due to his increased toughness of 6. And Wartgob using Ultimate Force cast Death Wave, and I rolled 46 to see how far it would extend towards those damn Umis. And to cap off this very eventful psychic phase, Paul wanted to psychic duel my Warphead, but as both rolling 1s meant our heads stayed on our shoulders. With the compulsory test of the Steel Skull now out of the way, it was Snaggernob's time to beckon his Ork lads forward into better firing positions. The Gretchen crew cheered as the squig pot was launched successfully, but the swarm had nothing to munch on in the end. Mechaniac Snaggersnot fired 2 bases of snotlings at the Leman Russ, but when his deranged cousins materialised, they were way off target. Now it was time for the Ork Dreadnought to shine, firing off his heavy bolter at the Sentinel, but I needed maximum rolls on the D6 and D4 to have any chance of penetrating its thick armour, and was unsuccessful in all of my shots, sadly. More ammunition from the splatter cannon was launched, killing a couple more guardsmen in return, which was fantastic, and the orcs cheered. But the projectile then embedded itself into the cactus plant, ending its reign of terror. The Gretchen on the forest's outline was making themselves quite a nuisance with their blunderbusses, taking down a few of the guardsmen in close range. And in support, we had the Bad Moon boys with their bolters firing at the guardsmen in the flank. The Orks praised Mork and Gork for their wonderful shooters as the Humies started to run in rout, causing enough casualties and then rolling a double 6. At the beginning of the psychic phase, I was to roll 46 to see how far the death wave would move, and praise Gork and Mork, we killed another 3 guardsmen, forcing the mob and squad to rout. Our ever-confident Warphead now cast into Crunch with 3 power, but Paul successfully nullified it, rolling a 6. In turn, Paul wanted to displace some of his squads of guardsmen, but then I nullified it, rolling a 4. The Imperial Guard commander ordered an off-board bombardment which landed on the unit of Bad Moons, killing the lead orc, and the rest of the guard moved up on the table to get better proximity for their weapons. The Orks would feel the sheer velocity and devastation of the assault cannons as their shields tore through the mob of confident but reckless Orks, killing the Warphead and Big Boss in the process. A secondary sentinel focused its targeters on the battle wagon, which resulted in the vehicle to go out of control at the start of the next Ork turn. The third and final sentinel was ordered to take down the shock attack gun, which it managed to hit, even though he was behind hard cover. Psychic phase, I failed to nullify displacement, which allowed his Rough Riders to charge my Orks and Weird Boy. And then Paul did manage to nullify Cop Dis, rolling a 6, thus ending the turn. We started to calculate the victory points at this stage of the game leading to turn 3, and it had to be said that the Orks are in real danger of this game sliding away from them. The start of the turn began with me rolling for the Steel Skull with no change, and then the rest of the Bad Moons charged to pile into the Rough Riders for the close combat phase. The Snotlings, now without a run herd leading them, ventured out into the open, and the Ork Dreadnought pilot stepped out of cover to get a better view of one of the sentinels. The battle wagon went out of control and collided into the ruins. And Snaggernob and his bodyguard of knobs in power armour ran for cover behind the cactus plants. Murgarg, the runt herd, herded the Gretchen to the edge of the forest and ordered them to take aim with their blunderbusses. And Zodaf ran into the cover of the ruins. The squig catapult, however, released another pot of ravenous squigs into the mass of Guardsmen bodies, and they deviated to a nice bunch of Guardsmen, and the swarm got to munch on some oomy flesh after all. The Ork Dreadnought pilot pulled the trigger on the heavy bolter to target the Sentinel, but without a targeter, it was going to literally be a long shot. The Gretchen splatter cannon crew looked dismayed as the ammo shell they released did nothing but boomerang back towards their lines and finally embed itself into the ruins. And the Gretchen blunderbusses did more harm to themselves that it misfired, taking out a few Gretchens, breaking the mob, and they ran for cover in the forest. And the ensuing hand-to-hand combat saw the Rough Riders' lances exploding on their charge, impact, and killing all of the Ork bad moons without reply. Mork, save us! And as both my weird boys were dead, I rolled a single die for the psychic phase, but Paul opted not to play any cards this turn. The Imperial Guard commander motioned his army to advance and clean out all the remaining Orks wherever they hid. The Leman Russ advanced and took aim at the retreating Gretchen. And the commander threw his haywire grenade at the battle wagon, but only to see it do no further damage. Sentinels and heavy weapon teams took aim at the Ork Dreadnought, but the mech-made hulk of metal had its protective glyphs and saw the shells fall harmlessly off its blessed body. The Rough Riders continued their flank charge and killed the Pain Doc, who was taking shelter in the ruins. Gork and Mork laughed as the squig squaw moved to chew through a slew of dumb oomies, and they had a feast to remember. And the remaining Ork survivors took heed to Snaganob's orders and pulled back into cover, not to give the Oomies any more pleasure in seeing more sons of Gork and Mork perish needlessly. And another squig pot of ravenous beasts was released, and the splendid cannon hit true and managed to take one of the 3 Sentinels out of control in Paul's next turn. Sounds of the Sentinel crashing and burning sent a surge of war across the Ork front lines with Snaganob and his bad moons. The Imperial Guard, undeterred, moved on to close in on the Ork front lines. And the Sentinels targeted the Ork Dreadnought again, but praised be to Mork and his Mechaniacs, as the body could not be breached yet again, much to Paul's frustration. One of the Sentinels did manage to see the battle wagon explode and flip on its side, and the battle cannon from the Leman Russ boomed over Warlord Snagger's boys, and one fell to the blast. As that was Paul's 4th and final turn, it was now time to see what missions we had. Maybe no surprise then, as I had taken hold and Paul had assassins. So with the added victory points and completing our objectives, and the swarm killing another couple of squads, I could drink some squid beer in celebration of an Ork victory this Orktober day. Praise Gork and Mork, and thanks Paul for being such a great opponent. Paul had reinforcements and Last Gasp as his 2 strategy cards, which he sadly couldn't play during the game or had the opportunity to do so. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. We really enjoy playing this and celebrating Orktober with you. And for our fans of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, you'll be delighted to hear that we'll be filming the next final Battle of Tears of Aisha campaign this week. And a final thank you to all my amazing patrons that help support the work that I do for the Crown of Command community. And if you like a bit of coarse language, then you might enjoy this blooper take of my blundering voiceover work in the final clip. My warlord Snaganob had the orc warrior. My orc walk. You fucking prick.